Hey, it's Verity here and welcome back to the Wow Embossing Powder YouTube channel. There are many ways to get creative with your embossing powders, and in today's video I've got 3 cards for you where I'm showing you how to layer up your embossing powders to create some really bold, interesting cards for your sentiments to sit on. So let's get started. So the first card I'm using today uses the Pick Me Up trio from Wow Embossing Powders. So this recently released on the Oceanic, and these have 3 beautiful colours to choose from. They are a mix of embossing glitters, and I'm going to share some tips on how to use them. So the first one I'm going to be using is Earl Grey embossing glitter. And this is a lovely soft grey embossing glitter with some iridescent glitter mixed in. So it's a little bit more of an off-white colour, not a complete sort of white hologram glitter. So I've smushed my ink pad across my cardstock, and I've not done it completely to cover the whole cardstock, I'm just covering one end, and I've covered it with the embossing glitter. Now it's really important with embossing glitter that you heat set this from behind the card, beneath the card, to start with. This will allow the embossing powder to start to melt, and as that melts it traps that glitter in it, so it won't blow off. Now when you do it from the front and you heat set it, it could blow the glitter off before it's had a chance to melt. So the second colour I'm going to be using from the trio is Minty, which is a beautiful soft mint green, and it's got some lovely iridescent glitter mixed into it as well. Now these embossing glitters are translucent, so when you layer them up, they are going to show the colour that's beneath it through the embossing powder as well. So it's going to overlap the Earl Grey embossing powder, and you'll get a bit of a mixture of the 2 colours. So again, I smooshed my ink pad down over the cardstock. This was overlapping the Earl Grey and then covering more of the plain cardstock as well. And I'm doing 2 to 3 layers of each colour as I heat set them. So the last colour I'm using in the trio is Punch, which is a beautiful sort of sorbet pink colour with glitter mixed in as well. This blends beautifully into that minty green embossing glitter, and I don't know, for some reason, this makes me think of an ice cream trio, this colour blend that we've got going on this card panel. As I said, I did about 2 layers of each colour of embossing glitter just to layer it up and get a really good vibrant colour. And as you can see, we get this lovely sort of ombre transition between those colours. So for the second card, we are going to be layering up opaque embossing powders. So before we were using translucent glitters, now we're using opaque powders. And some of these are opaque marbling. So we've got In The Navy, which was a new embossing powder released again just at the end of January. And then we've got Oceanic and Sea Mist. So opaque means that when it goes over the top, it's not going to show the colour that's coming through beneath. And when it's an opaque marbling, it's got some extra colours in it that sort of create a marble effect. So the first colour I'm using is Sea Mist. This is by Sara Naumann. And again, I'm covering just part of the cardstock with the ink and then the embossing powder. So this is a lovely sort of soft teal, got some yellowy green aquas in the mix as well as part of that marbling effect. The second colour I'm using is Oceanic, which is a lovely, gorgeous, rich blue teal colour. It's a really gorgeous colour in life, and I really love this teal. So this is now covering about the middle third of the card, overlapping, and this, when you heat it, you can really see that marbling effect. It's got a bit more of a speckly effect because it's got those different colours in it. Because it's opaque, it's not going to show that sea mist coming through beneath. The last colour I'm using is In The Navy, and if you know me, I love navy. So I was so excited when Wow came out with a navy embossing powder. And I really, really love it. It's a beautiful colour. And when heat set against these other 2, it really shows that beautiful navy colour. So I'm just doing this at the bottom. And the same as the embossing glitters, I did a couple of layers because I wanted a really nice, smooth finish to each of the embossing layers. So this gives a lovely sort of abstract background. I think this would also be really good for, say, a underwater scene or a sky scene, or you wanted to build this up as sort of a landscape. You could do some brown at the bottom, then a sort of a sunsetty colour in the middle, fading into a blue sky. So this method is a really, really interesting way of creating some abstract backgrounds in that method. So going on to the last card, we are going to use the embossing powders, and we're just going to create some individual embossing strips of card and layer those on top of each other. So these are using some of the Alexandra Renke embossing powders that Wow have teamed up with. And these are translucent marbling powders. So this is a combination of the two. Previously we had a translucent embossing glitter and opaque marbling powders. So the first one I am using is Manuela's Honey. This has some sort of a lovely orangey, browny yellow. It's a beautiful colour with some marbling powders in there. So these are the white speckles. And when heat set, you get this gorgeous, gorgeous bright yellowy orange colour with some white speckles through it. Now all I did was cut down some strips of card. These were about 4 1/4 wide by about 1.5 inches thick. I just smooshed these down into my ink pad to get ink on them and covered them with the embossing powder. So the second powder I'm using is Ulla's Cognac. This again has sort of that brown colour to it, but it's also got some gold embossing powder metallic particles in it as well. So this one sort of is a little bit darker than the previous one. And as I said, it has those gold flecks, which really pair well with the beautiful sort of orangey brown colour of the translucent powder. So with both of these strips, I did give them a couple of layers of embossing powder just to intensify the colour and the smoothness. And they're just side by side. You can see the difference in colour, and that one has that metallic gold flecks in the marbling and one has the white flecks for the marbling. So this last one is Karin's Dream. Now this one has chunky clear embossing powder with flecks of gold embossing powder in it. So this one, because again it's translucent, it's going to show the colour from beneath. So I did this on white card, and when it's heat set, you get these flecks of gold on white. Beautiful. But imagine trying this on a different colour cardstock, say a navy or a pink or a green. You could change this up in so many different colours. It's a really interesting powder and it looks beautiful. So just comparing the three there, you can see the differences but also the similarities they all have as a collection. So for these strips, what I did was I added some foam pads on the back of them, trimmed them down, and then I've added them to a card panel. So I'm adhering them down, just overlapping them slightly, so there's that layering aspect, but I've not actually had to layer the embossing powders. So this is a great way of mixing so many different embossing powders. Say if you create a load of embossing powder back panels and you've got some excess left over, trim them down and just layer them up in this way. It's a great way to use up some of your scraps. For the other cards, because they were already created as a background, I just trimmed them down and then foam mounted them onto a white card panel. For these cards, I'm using the Julie Hickey Designs Lower Alphabet die set. This is a great die set that has multiples of some of the letters, say for A's, for E's, for L's. So you don't always have to die cut an L twice. You've got 2 dies to die cut it once, and it's only once through the die cutting machine, which is great. For all of these cards, I used that to create the main focal word, and I die cut them out of white just to really pop against those bold backgrounds. And I've created 3 cards, one being hello, one being happy, and one being birthday. And then I'm just using my T-ruler to line them up and to ensure that they're straight. Just to give them a bit of added variation and interest, I've used different sizes of foam pads for each of the letters. So I've got one that's slightly raised, then it's slightly further down, then raised again, down, raised again. And I just keep that pattern. And it's only quite subtle that you only see it in person. You don't see it so much on camera, but it's just a little bit more added interest and variation to your card. For the remainder of the sentiment, I stamped some sentiments onto some white strips. These sentiments come from the Julie Hickey Designs Sentiment Banner Stamp and Die set. I've stamped these in black pigment ink and then I've trimmed them down to foam mount them onto the card panel. All of the cards were then finished off with some glossy dots which match beautifully with the colours. These again I got from Julie Hickey Designs. There is a selection you can get stormy skies, you can get a really bright rainbow one or more of a pastel rainbow one, and the pastel rainbow one went beautifully with the Pick Me Up trio. So I hope this has shown you a way to use your embossing powders to create some really interesting backgrounds, layering them up, and the different properties the different powders have when it comes to layering those embossing powders. Or why not use some of your scraps where you've created some embossed backgrounds, trim them down and then layer them up to create beautiful cards for your sentiments. If you enjoyed today's video, why not give it a thumbs up, and why not think about subscribing to the channel? You can also hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. If you want to check out my personal channel, Pretty Little Button, I have included a link here as well as down below. Until next time, happy crafting!